On this episode of the Oklahoma Breakdown with Ikard and Lehman, presented by Riverwind Casino, we discuss some of the interesting things OU's coaching staff said this week. Then West Virginia head coach Neal Brown joins us, and we finish with our winners and losers of the weekend. Please download and subscribe to the podcast, rate it 5 stars, and write us a good review. Follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Just search Oklahoma Breakdown on any of those, and you'll find us. All right. Our man Michael Hosty will kick this thing off. It's time for the Oklahoma Breakdown. It's a beautiful Sunday, July 28th, and you're listening to the Oklahoma Breakdown with Ikard and Lehman, presented by Riverwind Casino. Riverwind is Oklahoma City's premier casino experience, and there are so many reasons why Riverwind is consistently voted OKC's #1 casino, but it all starts with their amazing variety of gaming thrills and excitement. Riverwind's beautiful award-winning environment plays host to more than 2,800 of the latest electronic games with a huge selection of table games, including blackjack, match roulette, and Teddy's favorite, craps. No matter what your game, Riverwind has it in spades and hearts. And to learn more about their gaming promotions and entertainment options in the month of July, all you got to do is visit riverwind.com. Riverwind Casino, simply the best. It's almost here, Ted.
I know it.
I can smell the pads. I
Smell
can
the
hear the helmets
pads,
colliding. Let's go.
smell the cut grass, and you could feel the dew getting your shoes wet before you even start practice.
Love that.
Yeah.
Hate that feeling and love that feeling. Sooners getting started on Wednesday, but let's jump into some of the interesting things we heard from OU's coaching staff this week. They had their coaches luncheon. They also had an event on Saturday night with the Sooner Club and Sooner Sports Properties. Ted, just so you know, you were the only member of the radio team that was not there.
Yeah. Yes.
Just big dogged us, big timing us. Everyone but Ted made an appearance. Gosh, look at you. Must be nice. But
Yeah.
coaches said some interesting things this week. And let's start with Zac Alley. Feels like it's the first time we've actually seen him speak in public. I know that we've had some conversations with him, not in front of a camera, Ted, but everyone has always told us he talks like Venables, he acts like Venables. It's pretty wild how similar the mannerisms are. It's like a clone of him. It is just we were told that, and then seeing it with your own eyes is a different thing.
Yeah. No, it's funny, and uh, it's like if you're ever gonna like hand over the defense and finally like give a little bit of space there, you need to be able to hand it over to yourself in some degree, right? So I think that's what Venables played the long game with this one.
This is going to this may sound stupid, but I think we're all really excited about the defense this season. Brent Venables, we all know his track record as a defensive coordinator. You bring in Zac Alley, very excited about that addition and what that pair can accomplish kind of as the brain trust for the defense. But you don't rock a mustache like Zac Alley unless you're confident in yourself and you're confident in your players. I mean, a mustache signals to me that you believe in yourself, and then that confidence radiates to your players. They won't believe in you unless you believe in yourself, and there's nothing that says I believe in myself more than rocking a little mini push broom on your upper lip.
That's
That
right.
thing is that thing says it screams we're gonna play some good defense this year, okay, ladies and gentlemen. I saw that and it sounds so stupid. I'm fully aware, but it made me more confident that we're gonna be great on defense this year when I saw him rocking a mustache.
It's interesting. I wonder if that would still work if like we're going into year one. Is that only whenever we've got a really good base under us and we feel really good about it to begin with?
I think it's a combination of the two. It's like,
Yeah.
man, that guy's got some confidence. He's going full mustache.
Cherry on top of the
I
whole
mean,
situation.
but then yes, Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman being back and some of the additions on the defensive line. Yeah, I I think it's a combination of knowing all the experience and talent that this team has on the defensive side. But also, you got a defensive coordinator going, I am a mustache guy. Deal with it.
Yeah. Well, and it probably factors into his thinking more than anything. If they were going to be really bad on defense, he's probably rocking like the woodsman beard so he can try and hide, you know.
Yeah.
But the better you get, the more you trim off of the facial hair, I think.
Like the witness protection beard.
Exactly.
I don't want anyone in this state to know who I am. I don't know. It sounds so stupid, but I saw the mustache and went, that
Oh
guy's
yeah,
confident we're going to be good on defense.
that's good.
I did think it was interesting, and Venables has been asked about this quite a bit now. He's just not going to reveal anything about how him and Zac Alley are working together defensively. He's just not. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want anyone to know whether it's more of a Zac Alley influence or if it's more of his stuff traditionally that he's run. Clearly, it's going to be a combination of both. I think we can agree on that. But, and we'll find out in a month. But Brent Venables does not want to talk about it. He does not want to give anyone any idea of what to focus on or go study. He's going to continue to dance around that question.
Yeah, and it's smart. I mean, honestly, if you are, one of the offenses coming up on the schedule this year and you're trying to figure out what exactly it is Oklahoma's going to do, well, you can look at what they've done the last couple of years at Oklahoma under Brent Venables. And then, just naturally, you're going to have to find what Zac Alley has done whenever he's been off on his own, or what maybe they did at Clemson together that's a little bit different than what's happened so far. And whatever you could do to muddy the water a little bit, you continue to do that. I I do think that Venables is pretty good at this in the non-conference, not really doing what they do the rest of the year. Like they, especially whenever now that they've got a really good base under them, you may see a totally different defense the first 3 weeks in a row before you get into conference. Like they may major out of a 4-man front in week one. They may major out of a 3-man front, like the 3 safety Iowa State look in week two. They are going to be able to change things up a lot before they get to where and ultimately they're going to be multiple and all of that stuff, but they're going to keep people guessing early. I would imagine.
I would imagine that Tennessee's going to turn on the tape and go, okay, this is what Oklahoma is defensively this season under Zac Alley and Brent Venables. And then I imagine on the first series, Tennessee's going to go, that's not what was on tape.
That's right. Yep. Whether it's a front, whether it's personnel, whether it's, blitzing or not blitzing, there's going to make them adjust. And with all that's riding on the line, I mean, every single game is going to be massive, of course, but that game is going to be, it's like you're going to have 2 season openers. And not that we don't need to focus at all in our non-conference. We do, but it's going to be interesting to see what that game looks like. It'll I imagine both offensively and defensively will feel like a season opener.
For Heupel, he's going to be thinking the same way we're thinking. And he's going to be trying to essentially guess what it's going to look like for OU defensively in that game. He knows Venables well, right? They spent a lot of time together. So that's where the chess match of that football game with Tennessee's offense and Oklahoma's defense, it's fun to think about. It's a ways off, but it's fun to think about. Looking on the other side of the ball, you heard Venables and Alley really not get into any of the details of what they're going to do defensively at the coach's luncheon. You heard something similar from the co-offensive coordinators, Seth Littrell and Joe John Finley. I would say they were unwilling to dive into how the offense is going to be different than what Jeff Lebby was doing, but basically said, hey, we're going to be really aggressive. And one of the things I believe, I think they have a good idea of what they want to do. But I also believe the offense is going to be designed around what they feel they can accomplish in the running game. Now, whether they want to say that publicly or not, but I do think they want to see what happens with the offensive line these first couple weeks in training camp, and also what happens with the running back position. Like, if they're feeling really good about the 5 guys that emerged along the O-line and what they can do in run blocking situations and the RPO stuff that you can build off all of that, then I think you're going to see kind of a run heavy and then RPO heavy type of identity emerge with this new duo, a co-offensive coordinator. But I'm not sure they know yet. It seems like one of those things that you're only going to learn that if you're Joe John Finley and Seth Littrell these first couple of weeks of camp, when you see what strengths you have when it comes to that offensive line and the running back position and where the run game is kind of at. And then you have to assess that and build off of what those guys do well.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, in spring, you didn't have your new center. You didn't, Garen Hatchett, who's expected play, you didn't have him in the spring. I think they probably feel pretty good about where the offensive line's going to be, but you don't know how they look and what they're going to block best. And I mean, that's going to be the biggest part about how you're going to build your running game and how everything kind of evolves from that point. So there is quite a bit of unknown to that degree. And you're right. It's not unusual for teams, especially when you got a new quarterback and you've added some new players to the mix. It's not unusual that you go into training camp thinking that you're going to major in one thing, and 4 or 5 games into the season, you're doing things that you didn't expect to be doing, that you've stumbled upon some stuff that is really productive, whether it's, dang, all of a sudden Bauer Sharp is a dude, we got to get him the football, and you start designing stuff for him, or maybe you got Taylor Tatum, the freshman running back, who is really good at running outside zone, or whatever it may be, and you start majoring in some different stuff that you maybe didn't expect. So I do think it's going to be a bit of a work in progress, and it's probably going to be that way on defense to a degree as well. It just kind of always is.
You mentioned Bauer Sharp. So Joe John Finley made some headlines at the coaches' luncheon when he was asked basically, hey, who's the guy we're not talking about enough on the offense? And he said Jaden Gibson. Toby Rowland asked Seth Littrell the same question on Saturday night at the Sooner Club and Sooner Sports Properties event. His answer was Bauer Sharp, which got me real excited. Make the tight end position great again at Oklahoma. Let's go.
Yes.
But I think that Joe John Finley saying that about Jaden Gibson's really, really interesting. And it made me think about Gibson's situation and just the situation at wide receiver overall. We feel really good about that position going into the season. I would say we feel as good about it as we felt in quite some time. And when you look at Jaden Gibson's situation, with Andrell Anthony still recovering from the ACL and Farouk missing a lot of time and recovering from the foot fracture, Jaden Gibson has every opportunity to go and take a starting spot and to never give it back. And that's the mentality as training camp starts this week. That's the mentality he's got to have, because he's going to get every opportunity to go out there with the first offense and to make plays and to make the coaches turn to each other during those meetings after those practices and go, well, this guy has to be a starter. He's got to run out with the first group. Look at all these plays he's making. Look at the energy he's playing with. Look at how fast he's playing. Look at how he's blocking. Like, he has every opportunity these first couple weeks of camp to go out there and play at such a high level that the coaching staff simply can't justify not running him out there with the first group. I mean, I feel like Burks and Anderson, those guys feel like starters. The third spot, in my mind, is kind of wide open, and Jaden Gibson, he's got an interesting opportunity here early in camp to go and take that spot and never give it up.
Yeah,
What else could
I
you ask
agree.
for as a player, Ted?
I know. And I think one of the great things about the wide receiver group is I think we usually talk about it in terms of starters with three guys, right? Um, but I think where we're at, I think we could honestly have five or even six starting wide receivers. What I mean by that is like package wise and like concept wise, whatever it is you're doing, like Jaden Gibson, if he even if he's not announced as a starter, there's going to be things that they build directly for him. Personnel packages where he's in, concepts where he's in, and like that doesn't make you like a backup. It makes you like an actual part of the offense, of the design of the offense. So I think it's you got to think of it in that terms. And he's one of the most productive guys. I think I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think he had 14 catches for 6 touchdowns last year and averaged like 25-ish yards per catch. Incredibly productive whenever he's out there on the field. And I I think a lot of people are talking about Oklahoma's wide receiver core, but they don't talk about Jaden Gibson. I mean, we could find ourselves, in playing against Tennessee, the cat may be out of the bag by that point, and it's like, hang on a second. Who the hell is the T-Rex playing wide receiver for Oklahoma? They've got these two gigantic outside wide receivers. I don't think like the physical nature of the group gets the respect that it deserves with the size and like bulk that they have. Like they have two gigantic wide receivers. We haven't had that. Like that is an anomaly for Oklahoma football. We've never had a 6'4" and 6'6" starting wide receiver.
The I would say the lack of respect, maybe that's not the best way to put it, but that's kind of how it feels for Nick Anderson. That's really head scratching for me because the production was there a season ago.
Freshman with 10 touchdowns.
But for Jaden Gibson, people not talking about him much, it kind of makes sense. 14 catches, 375 yards, 5 touchdowns last year. When you only have 14 catches in a season, people aren't going to talk about you. But I think the encouraging thing about Jaden Gibson was, and it sounds silly, but like the stuff he did on special teams, that's what stood out to me. The way that he blocked on the perimeter. Like, and Saturday night at the Sooner Club thing, he was one of the guys that was on the player panel. And I think that speaks to how much he's grown up, how much he's matured as a player. And it just feels like with the opportunity he has to take a starting job here in training camp, how much he's matured, how much he's developed physically, it feels like it's about to all come together for him. But it's about production, Ted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he can't throw himself the football. So there's a Jackson Arnold piece and an offensive line piece and an offensive philosophy piece to all of this, but I am really encouraged by what he can be this season. And I think when one of the co-offensive coordinators is saying, "Hey, he's the guy you guys are sleeping on the most," like that carries weight with me. We know Joe John. He doesn't. I mean, he's just not throwing stuff out there willy nilly. That's not his style at all. So I just I heard that. I look at the opportunity he's got in front of him. I look at how much faster he played in the last couple of games last season, and it just feels like it's about to come together for him. And I just hope that's the case because you're right, man. he's so long and athletic. It's going to be a tough matchup for a lot of teams in the SEC if he gets it all together this season.
Yeah. And he's one of the guys that brings the edge to the offense too.
Oh, love it. I
Uh,
mean,
he's got
attitude.
some attitude to him. I mean, in that same luncheon, Zac Alley said if he could pick any offensive player to have on defense, he said he'd put Jaden Gibson at safety. So that's a pretty good endorsement, I would say.
I That'd be a big safety. That'd be a tall safety, a rangy safety.
It got me thinking, like, I'm surprised. Well, I guess I'm not, because all of those guys, they go to wide receiver these days, but I don't, like, we've seen kind of the breakout size guy at a lot of positions. I But you haven't seen it at safety.
Are you going? Let's go down this rabbit hole. Let's do it. I feel like if you're moving Jaden Gibson to safety, then you're putting, Kanai Walker at one of the corners, Gentry Williams, or maybe Des Malone. You talk about a guy with size, and then you're throwing it back to the Legion of Boom. Just, hey, we are basing everything out of cover three. Good luck throwing into the holes with all this length. Like I I could see it. I could see it.
Length and speed and a 6'6" psychopath running center field.
Perfect.
You
It's
Yeah, that
perfect.
would.
It
Hey,
sounds fun.
I would if I was a secondary coach, I would be, I'd be walking past the wide receiver group all the time for the guys that aren't getting on the field, looking for some size back there. Say, hey, you guys want to get on the field? I need someone that can go get the ball, running free safety, middle of the field. Who's available?
There was some Jackson Arnold talk as well. I thought, and it was something that we talked about heading into spring ball. Ted Jackson Arnold, he had to take a step when it came to the mental side of playing the quarterback position. And I was really encouraged with what Seth Littrell said about him. I mean, he said Jackson Arnold has worked tirelessly this offseason on understanding the mental component of playing the quarterback position. And I love that it sounds like all those mistakes that he made in the Alamo Bowl kind of resulted in him having a chip on his shoulder and being ultra motivated to make sure he never plays a game like that again. So Littrell talked a lot about his growth mentally, kind of some of the things he saw from him going against BV's defense in the spring and how complex that thing can be. And Venables isn't holding back at all for his quarterback. So it's something we've talked about. It's something that's obvious. He needs to become a better processor. He needs to understand the mental component of playing the position more. But hearing the offensive coordinator and the play caller and the guy that's in the room with him every single day talk about that, it's encouraging, right? It's good to hear if you're an OU
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah. And that's something we touched on in the spring, but it does you do kind of lose sight of it and forget about it from time to time. Jackson Arnold in spring ball was going up against one of the best defenses in the country, right? And going against those guys in the secondary and trying to figure out how they're disguising and all the stuff that they're starting to do, because they're 3 years in, they're far more sophisticated than they were even a year ago. That's going to help him a ton. He's going to get in like the early part of the season, be like, oh my God, this is the easiest thing I've ever done. And I think he's going to have a lot of success early and put the Arizona game in the rearview mirror. And I still believe that, I know we lost the game, but that game was an overall net positive for me when it comes to Jackson Arnold. But if you think about it, was probably very beneficial for him to have, like, it would have been great to have a good, confident Jackson Arnold coming out of that game after a big win, but would it really have him digging into himself and where he really needs to improve? I mean, this, Gabe, like, that something like that lingers all off season, especially when you play a position like quarterback and you can hear the people talking about it and see that, maybe some confidence in you has been shaken. It changes the way that you attack some things. So all of that to say that it was could be a blessing in disguise that it all went down the way that it did.
It's an interesting point because let's say he goes out there, completely lights it up, throws for 4 touchdowns. Maybe his mentality this offseason is completely different. Now, I'm sure he would still go, I want to get better. But you go out there and play like that in your one real opportunity of the season. You look at what you've been doing and how you've been getting ready, how you've been training, how you've been watching film, and you go, hey, I think what I have, the way I've been doing it is working. Mm-hmm. You go out and you have the struggles that he had, you turn it over as much as he did in that game. All of a sudden you're auditing every decision you make in life. Like you just are. It's just natural. But it sounds, everything we've heard the coaches talk about publicly, all these conversations we've had, privately with him, it sounds like he has attacked it with the right mentality. And, with this mentality of, I'm going to prove everyone wrong that's saying, I'm not going to be good, but also like it seems like it's very focused on just being the best teammate he can be and being the best player he can be, which I think that's the healthiest way to go about it, as opposed to all these people have been talking noise on me since that game. Like I'm going to prove every single one of them wrong. I'm keeping receipts. I'm not quite sure Arnold's got the Mayfield mentality when it comes to that stuff, but Ted, if it would have gone perfectly in the Alamo Bowl, would he have put in the time and the work that he's put in this offseason? I don't know, but I think you're right. Overall, it being as rough as it was for him personally in that game, I think it's led to an extremely productive offseason for him.
He's not going to get the crown in a big, grand coronation. He's going to have to go out and earn it on the battlefield. And perhaps it's better that way.
Last thing we're going to talk about from the stuff that the coaches said this week. I know you love talking about kickers.
Yes.
And Venables, he made some headlines with what he said about the kicking competition. And there's going to be a competition during training camp. There always is at the kicking position. But he said Tyler Keltner is the odds-on favorite to be OU's kicker. I feel like we avoid the kicker conversation on this podcast just because we don't know anything about it.
What are you going to say?
Like, hey, it either goes in or it doesn't. Like, what else are we going to say? I can't tell you about shin angles and where you strike the foot. I'm like, I don't know. So that we don't talk about it a ton on here, but I think we both can acknowledge kicking, field goal kicking is going to be really important for this football team this season. It could be the difference in winning and losing multiple football games when you look at this tough schedule. And, well, Tyler Keltner's the guy. I guess that's what the head football coach said, Ted. So I guess we all rally behind Keltner.
Yeah. When he says he's the odds-on favorite, I mean, that's coming from the guy that would know. Is a battle at kicker good? I don't know. Maybe it is. I kind of feel like I'd prefer to have a kicker that knows he's the guy, that always has been the guy, that just walks out there confidently, puts it between the uprights. Like, I don't like making my kickers nervous when I don't need to, if that makes sense, right? I don't know that I want a kicker going through the entire training camp every night, stressing over every kick in practice. Like, you want to build an environment where those guys have a little bit of pressure in practice, I guess, to acclimate them to the game atmosphere. But I mean, it's almost like you want your kicker to be the most confident guy on the team and trust what he's done the most and be able to go out there unburdened and hit everything he looks at. But then again, I don't know anything about kicker. It's just an observation from afar. I don't know what you do. I mean, I know they work on technique and they've got a great special teams coach that has had a really good track record with kickers and punters. So he's got a process that he goes by. But as far as me, I want my guy confident, and I want everyone in the stadium confident whenever he walks on the field. Let's go get a hot dog. They're going to hit a field goal here. Instead of, oh my God, it's a 30-yarder. Can we get the snap down? Can we put it between the uprights? Like, that's not what you want.
Venables talking about this made me dive into kicking stats, which I think is a first.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at Tyler Keltner in his career, he's made 75.7% of his field goals. He's never missed an extra point, career long of 54 yards. And I wondered how that stacked up with the best kickers that we saw last season in the SEC. And Will Reichard from Bama and Harrison Mevis from Missouri were the two best kickers in the SEC last year. Reichard was 88% on 25 field goals. So that means 22 of 25. Mevis was 80% on 30 field goals, 24 of 30, including a couple very clutch long ones from that guy. OU last season, Zach Schmidt was 15 of 21. That's 71%. So when you look at what the best kickers in the SEC did last year, you look at what OU's schedule looks like and how many close games the Sooners are likely to be in. I think it's fair to say that Tyler Keltner needs to be in that 80 to 85% range for OU to have the type of season it wants to have. Meaning, he needs to be better than he's been throughout his career up to this point, like 10% better.
Mm-hmm.
Need him, and you need him to be very, very good from what, 40 yards and in? 45 and in?
I'd say 45.
45 and in? So
NFL it's like 50 and in. You better be automatic. I'd give it 5 yards on that. I mean, 5 yards, 45 is not in normal conditions should not be a stretch. Like that should be an extra point kick should get you in from 45 almost. You know what I'm saying? Like that same swing. So I'd say 45. And I'd be interested to see like, some of those better kickers in the SEC, if you eliminate some of the outliers, if they've had really long kicks or kicks in really bad conditions, and what does the percentage look like then? It's probably even higher.
I'm not doing that research for kickers.
Gabe,
Okay.
we need a full breakdown.
This was the most kicking research I've ever done, bud. Okay. I don't think I'm diving much deeper than that, but I just think looking at the stats for the top kickers in the league a year ago, I mean, clearly Bama, extremely talented football team. Missouri had a really good season last year. Kicking was a big part of that. Those teams won close games. And when you look at what the schedule looks like for OU this year, I don't think it is, I don't think it's an over-exaggeration to say Tyler Keltner is going to win or lose football games for Oklahoma. And he needs to be better than he's been in his career. He cannot go out there and hit 3 out of every 4 field goals. If he does, we're going to lose games.
We've been in a lot of one-score games over the last couple of years, and I don't expect that trend to change.
3-7? I think in the 10. Is that right?
Probably.
I think it has not been good. One score games have not been good to the Sooners under Brent Venables. So that is we avoid the conversation, Ted, but Tyler Keltner, the kicker, is going to be very, very important when it comes to this football team's success. And Doug Deacon and whoever else is working with this guy, they have to get him to elevate his game because he's been a 75% guy in his career. He's played a lot of football. He's kicked a lot. He has to be better. If he's what he's been, I don't think OU's going to end up where it wants to be. He's got to be like an 80%, 85% type of guy, and he's got to just be nails from, you say, 45 and in. That seems fair.
Yeah. It's difficult to process and painful to think about, but you could be a really good football team, a much better football team than you've been really in every metric. But if you're not better at kicker, it may not translate onto the field. Like you may walk away from the end. You could walk away from the end of a season saying, like, are we any good? Have we gotten any better? And it can come down to a handful of kicks that really change the way that you think about everything.
Let's all,
fortunately or unfortunately,
let's all rally behind positive vibes to Keltner, the good vibe tribe, to Tyler Keltner. Let's go, man. Make your
we'll
kicks.
be good. We'll
Please,
be good.
Please make your kicks. He's back, Ted. Neal Brown is back for his annual visit. It's always so fun catching up with him just because we can talk about some of the bigger picture stuff as well as talk about his football team with him. So I know our listeners are going to enjoy our Neal Brown interview. But first, fuel your journey at Love's Travel Stops and save 10 cents per gallon on gas and auto diesel. Download the Love's Connect app today. It takes just seconds to unlock savings when you scan your barcode in the app at the pump. This discount and other mobile deals on drinks and snacks are available at more than 640 Love's locations across the beautiful United States. Before your next trip, download the Love's Connect app, your guide to savings on the road.
And celebrate with a Schooner All-American Ale, the official craft beer of OU Athletics from Coop Ale Works. Named after the iconic Sooner schooner that races across Owen Field after an OU score, you can join in on the celebration with an ice-cold beer from Coop Ale Works. You can enjoy it at the Palace on the Prairie, at OU Athletic events, at the bar, at the tailgate, and in the comfort of your own home. For more information on Schooner All-American Ale, visit SchoonerAle.com. Must be 21 to purchase. Please drink responsibly. Schooner All-American Ale, the taste of game day.
And we are brought to you by Simple Modern, the Oklahoma-owned drinkware company and #1 drinkware sales leader on Amazon and Target. Can you believe it is already time to start thinking about going back to school? Simple Modern has everything you need to get your kiddos ready for the first day. Think of every character your kiddo loves on everything they need at simplemodern.com. You can be back to school ready in just a few clicks. And with 10% of all profits going to charity, many right here in Oklahoma, you know you're helping others too. That's a win-win. That's Simple Modern. Check their amazing products out today at simplemodern.com. All right, here is the head football coach for West Virginia, Neal Brown. It is our pleasure to be joined by the head football coach of the West Virginia Mountaineers. He's back for his annual visit, people. Neal Brown is in the house via phone this time. Didn't want to show your face, Coach. What are we doing? Come on, man.
I am en route to Columbus, Ohio for 12 and under softball. This is my kind of our last weekend before we start on Tuesday, and my middle child is playing in a softball tournament. So I'm heading in that direction.
Well, man, it's awesome season last year. You guys had a nice end, had the nice bowl win, 9 wins rather, and probably looking to build on that. What's the offseason been like with all the change? I know it's been wild with the conference realignment, but what has the focus been like in your building?
No, it's been good. You know, we had a really solid year last year. Laid a complete egg against you guys, but that was our worst game by far. But we did. We had a good year. I thought we were a young football team last year that played that took a significant step, and now it's about how do we take the other step, and that's to go from a really good football team to a championship level football team. And that's the next step for us. And there's a lot of excitement, you know, as we finished our summer workouts last night, and we'll start, guys report back on Tuesday. So a little long weekend. And then we'll have our first practice on Wednesday. So we're ready to roll.
I assume, roster retention, roster building, it's become so important with the way that the portal works. I got to assume, Neal, was it much easier to retain and build the roster coming off a 9-4 season as opposed to some of the seasons you had previous? Like what was that process like after such a successful season for your program?
Well, winning helps for sure, but also we've been able to go out and raise the amount that we have in our collective, which is equally as important in the world we're in right now. And so we are, I think that retention comes down to, you've got to be able to pay the athletes, and then you've got to provide them an experience. And then the third thing from an individualistic standpoint for the player is they've got to be playing, meaningful snaps in a system that they feel like is showcasing their skills. And so all those things work into retention. And so we've grown our collective. We do feel like that we provide as good as the experience there is in college football. And so we've been able to retain over the last 2 years, almost our entire production. We lost some guys just like everybody else, but most of our production that had eligibility left, we've been able to retain.
Oh, this is bad. Ted's muted and he doesn't realize it. Oh, what a noob.
About that. Idiot.
I'll edit it out. I won't. I'm leaving it in.
How do you find the balance when it comes to the NIL stuff for recruiting and transfer portal guys? I mean, that seems like it's the most difficult part of it.
Well, that's a really good question because it's going to change again. But for the last 2 years, the rules have, for the most part, stayed the same. And so the world we've lived in is we want to do a really good job at the high school recruiting level of evaluating talent and then bring them into our program and develop them. And we've heavily invested in strength conditioning, nutrition, recovery, sports science, sports psychology, in the hopes of really developing guys at a higher rate than maybe some of the people we compete against, and then being able to retain those guys that we have developed. We've been in the portal, but we haven't used a large amount of financial resources in the portal. And so now the rules are changing again. And so your roster's got to get at 105. It's revenue sharing now that we're paying players through rather than through a third-party collective. And it's happening fast. So this is going to happen, going to go through when the House case is completely settled. But these are decisions that are going to have to be made in November and December. And there's still a lot of unknowns. So you got to be flexible. You got to be ready to adjust.
Neal, there's so much going on now for a head coach of a big time college football program. Where have you chosen to allocate your time? Because there's just not enough time in the day to do everything that a head coach has to do. So what have you delegated the most? And then what do you mainly focus your time on now with all of these demands for a head coach?
So this is kind of the buckets that I've that I invest the most time in is relationships with players. And you've got to be intentional about both formal meeting. Well, what I mean by formal is just scheduled meetings, one-on-one meetings, and then informal, meeting them kind of where they're at, whether it's in the weight room, training room, cafeteria. So that's the first one, relationship with the players. The second is just from the organization is, the management of it, the scheduling, those type of items. The third is really leading, not necessarily coaching the coaches, but just leading the coaches in the key support areas. And then the last one for me is on the offensive side. And that's where I came up through the profession. And so those are the buckets that I invest the most time. And then we've gone out and hired people that I fully trust and I believe in to carry out the leads and things where I'm not an expert. And that's the way I handle things in my personal life, professional life is you can only be an expert in so many things. And I think where people get in trouble is when they try to lead or make decisions in areas that you're not an expert. And so we've gone out and hired experts that, our defense coordinator is a defensive expert. Our special teams coordinator is a special teams expert. Our strength conditioning coach, he's the strength conditioning expert, so on. That's how we've done it, and I think you have to do that to be successful. Now, other people are doing it different ways. That doesn't mean that the way that we're doing is the best, but that's the way that from a head coach perspective here at West Virginia that we've chosen to go.
Now, the NIL, all the off-field stuff is changing, constantly changing, but I mean, I guess I'd call this on-field, like the actual football part of things, not the transfer board, but the conference realignment rather. Oklahoma, Texas out. The Pac-12 is no more. Big 12 gained some of those teams. Maybe more to happen. The ACC stuff that's going on, Clemson, Florida State to the Big 12. Like, what do you think the future is for college football whenever it comes to the conference stuff? Is this going to continue to be a bunch of musical chairs?
Yeah, and I'll go back to the answer to the other question. Like, those are things that I listed that I'm good at. Then the necessary piece is NIL, and I deal with that every single day. And so I didn't really finish my thoughts there. The older you get, the more random your thoughts get. So I wanted to finish that. But realignment-wise, I don't think it's finished. I think we're going through a really turbulent time, and I think it'll continue to be turbulent for the next few years. I really think the Big 12 is on really good footing right now. And I really believe that we firmly established ourselves as third in the pecking order, and the trajectory of our conference is really strong. And I really think we have the most balanced league. There's other leagues that are more top heavy that have had some more success in the playoffs, and that's kind of the next deal for us in the Big 12 is we've got to do a better job in the playoff. Where it stands 10 years from now, I don't know. I just don't see how we continue down the road we're on where there's not some kind of breakaway where whether it's 50 schools, 60 schools, however many schools it is there's a breakaway, and then college football is by itself. And we have a commissioner, and my hope is it's back to regional. I think that's the best thing for the fans. But I don't think you'll see any really completely major shift until there's a slowdown in the money coming in. And right now there's no slowdown. So there's no real reason to change the current dynamics.
Neal, do you think the 12-team playoff, right, this is the first year of it, do you think it kind of infuses some energy into the sport, having more spots for more teams? Like, I think you guys are a perfect example. You put together a great year in the Big 12, and you could find yourself in the college football playoff. Like, do you think that infuses programs with a little bit more energy around the country?
Absolutely. You go to 12 teams, you're going to have, so 12 are getting in, and you're probably looking anywhere from 20 to 25 that are probably alive for those spots heading into middle of November, which has never been the case. And it gives access. We have 2 guaranteed spots in the Big 12, and depending on how the league goes, we could have 3 or upwards of 4 that are getting in the playoffs. And so it adds another dimension. But I think that's something that's not getting talked about is just access. It gives real accessibility to that playoff. And then the playoffs, no different than March Madness, no different than the college baseball where we see teams go on runs at the end of the year. once you're in the tournament, anything can happen because you don't have to be the best team overall. You just got to be better that night. And so I think it gives access. It's definitely going to make the month of November much more entertaining. More teams are going to be alive. But I do think it's a definite benefit. There's going to be some side effects of it. What those are, I'm not sure. But it's going to make it for a really exciting end of the regular season.
Yeah, well, it's made the schedules fascinating. Like we're dealing with that ourselves. I mean, there's a lot of similarities with you guys. You know, Oklahoma's picked number 8 in the SEC, and we play pretty much everyone that's ranked ahead of us. And
yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah, looking at your schedule, it's about the same. And then, oh, by the way, throw in Pitt and Penn State in the non-conference, and you guys got yourself a pretty brutal schedule, challenging.
It's challenging. Yeah, I think you look at it one or two ways. You have to look at it. It is going to be challenging. That's the facts, but it's also a lot of opportunity there. You know, we're going to have a ton of eyes on us week 1 when we host Penn State. That's a game we're really looking forward to. Have a lot of respect for that program, what James has done. But they're coming to Morgantown to kick off the year, and this place will be electric. You guys have been here. It's loud. It's a tough place to play. It's hard to get to. I mean, and our fans are looking forward to that. This is kind of the last game in the series. We went there last year. It's a rivalry that was played for many years in a row that was, quite frankly, just really one-sided. You know, Penn State has dominated the rivalry in modern times, and this is the last crack we get at them for a long time. And so it's gonna be electric, and we're gonna have a really good football team. And what we've got to do is we've got to be prepared to be at our best early in the season, week 1, and then we play one of the top rivalry games in all of college football, week 3 at Pitt.
Looking at your team, Neal, it's got to feel good having Garrett Green back with kind of the dual threat that he is at the quarterback position. But as you guys head into training camp, what do you really feel is the strength of your football team right now?
Well, I think if you look at it offensively, Garrett Green, our running backs, and we've got 5 of our top 7 offensive linemen. So the strength of our football team's got to be running the football. Now we're excited about because we got some young guys that played a lot for us last year at wideout that we feel like are going to be much improved. And then defensively, it's going to be the same thing. Our front is going to lead us. We've been good on the defensive line. We feel like we've got depth there. We've got some young linebackers that we're going to play the best at that position that we have during my tenure here. And so I think that both our fronts is really going to be the strength.
I'm looking at the depth chart here, and I don't know how accurate this is, but as I look at the offense and defense, it looks like a veteran team. I mean, a ton of juniors and seniors, especially on the line of scrimmage that you got. I mean, that's got to be one of the biggest advantages in college football is whenever you can return experienced guys.
Yeah, we've got some guys that have been through the battles, I think, but the key to that is and you guys know this from playing and living it, it all starts afresh. So when we start practice on Tuesday, or on Wednesday, we report on Tuesday, it's a blank slate. Now, what do you do? Now, that experience really helps you deal with things, especially on the road or when you're going through adversity. But what you've done in the past really doesn't matter anymore. So you've got to be able to start with a clean slate, build. Nobody cares what we did last year, and so that's my message to our guys. But we do have some returning players. We've got some guys that have played a lot of snaps. But the expectation, and I believe it's reasonable, is that they raise their level of play.
On the defensive side, Neal, it wasn't too long ago, man, where you guys were playing at extremely high level on the defensive side of the ball. One of the best in the Big 12, arguably the best in the Big 12 just a couple seasons ago. Are you headed back to that? Do you feel like you guys, took a little step last year and now this is the season where you get back to playing the type of defense you guys want to play at West Virginia?
So if you look at our our path over the last 5 years, is 19 we were okay on defense, 20 we were elite, one of the best defenses in the country, 21 we were good, and then really fell off in 22. Now the fall off in 22, it wasn't like we forgot how to coach. what we did is we didn't have any money. And so we lost a lot of really good players. And nobody really talks about that, but that's the truth. And then and then in 23, we were rebounded and we were okay. We were kind of middle of the pack, and we believe that we returned enough. And really, it's going to depend on how we play in the secondary. We've gone and really made some key additions in the transfer portal in the secondary with a full expectation we're going to play better there. And if our secondary plays at a higher level, I believe that we can have one of the top tier defenses in our league.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Like, one of the things that it's probably going to be different team to team, but the in-helmet communication stuff, how big of a factor is that for you guys? Is that something that you're going to be leaning on, or is that just maybe a little added bonus there to talk to the quarterback, maybe some tips and reminders before the snap?
It helps. Offensively, it helps. We'll be able to do some things. We'll be able to dictate some things to the defense that maybe you couldn't before. And so that's going to help. We used it in the bowl game. We used it in spring practice, really the last 3 years. And so we have some experience using it, but I do think it's beneficial. On the flip side, on defense, nobody's really talking about this, but I think it has a chance to really be to really change the game as far as defensively, because there's so much pre-snap movement now, and people are playing with tempo. And so the coach being able to talk directly to a player on the field, you're going to be able to make adjustments much easier. And that's what we found using it in the bowl game last year against North Carolina. Offensively, yeah, it helps, but defensively, I thought it was a major change and something that really benefited the defense.
Well, if the North Carolina game is any indication, if my memory serves me correctly, you end up getting a bunch of mayonnaise dumped on you after whooping up on them. So
that's accurate. That's accurate. They should do that to the losing coach.
Yeah, that was quite the visual. I was very I had a nice chuckle when I saw them dump all that mayonnaise on you, Neal. Now, I just have one more, man, and it's kind of another big change, but I'm interested in how big of a change you think it is in college football this year with the rule change that analysts can coach. And I know that some programs, have been tiptoeing around that and for years, but now that, and I always thought it was a silly rule, but now that those staffers can coach the players during the game, during practice, like how big of a change is that in your mind? How big of a change is it for you guys?
Well, it's a rule that needed to change. I'm not sure it would have held up in a court of law, and so it needed to change. Let's say that first. As far as on field, you're just going to be more efficient in your coaching. Think about it like this. If you're looking around and you're trying to pick a school for one of your kids, you're looking for really the student to teacher ratio. And what's happened now with this rule is the coach to player ratio has become much smaller. And so if you take offensive line now, rather than one coach trying to coach 15 to 18 guys, now you can have 2, sometimes 3, and now it's a much smaller group of guys that you're coaching or meeting with. Same with the defensive line. And so I think that's where you're going to see it. I think it'll really help teams overall fundamentally. And it's going to help in game. You're going to have more information than maybe you did before. And so I think it's a quality. It needed to happen. This is one of those rules that's probably past due, but I do think it's good for the overall level of play.
You guys got picked 14th in the preseason poll last year. That became, I think, kind of something that you and your team rallied around. I remember you telling us when you joined us last year, Neal, that you guys kind of put it everywhere in the facility. Pick 7th this year. Did you just put like 14 and then put like divided by 2 next to all the 14s? Like, is 7? Could you get the guys as fired up as you could with the pick of 14th last season?
Yeah, to me, this year it's not necessarily as much about our team, because I think in our league you could probably make an argument for 9, maybe upwards of 10 teams that have a realistic chance to win our conference this year. So not necessarily where we're picked team wise. I'm not offended by it, or I think we're better than that, but we got to go out and prove them. Where I'm really disappointed is just where some of our players are being evaluated at. Garrett Green, if you just had his numbers without his name, and you put it against – this is a really good quarterback league. If you put his rushing and passing stats up against the other guys in our league and took out their names, I think he would measure up really favorably. So I think he's really being undervalued. We've got 2 running backs that are back-to-back freshman All-Americans, and Jaheim White, C.J. Donaldson. Nobody's talking about them. Nobody. And we've got, I think, the premier offensive lineman in our league, and Wyatt Milam, who I think is going to be a first-round pick. You know, he didn't even make first-team all-conference last year, which is crazy to me. And then we've got 2 defensive guys that I took the media day, Sean Martin, who's been really productive for 3 years, and Aubrey Burks, who's been on all-conference teams, and nobody's talking about them. And so that's where my issues are, is we've got really good players here, and Wyatt's the only one that made it the preseason all-conference team. So I think we've got to go out and continue to perform, and we've got a great opportunity early in the season, again, in 2 rivalry games. But our players are much, in my opinion, are much better and stand in our league and should be on the all-conference preseason all-conference team, and they simply weren't.
Neal, you're the man. We always appreciate you joining us every year. And now that we're in different conferences, like, I can openly cheer for West Virginia each and every Saturday. It feels good, man. I'm going to be cheered like hell for you.
I appreciate it. Hey guys, y'all do a great job, and best of luck to your Sooners, man, down in the Southeastern Conference.
Hey, we'll take all the luck we can get, brother. Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Yep. See you.
Yep. I'm going to be cheering for West Virginia. It's nice to be able to support Neal Brown and not have to worry about being in the same conference. I'm gonna be cheering for the Mountaineers.
I think they're going to be pretty good too. No, they got a brutal schedule.
That's what Neal made it sound like.
Yeah, they got a tough schedule, and it's going to be fun early on. I think they might be able to beat Penn State, and that'll put them on the map really quickly. If they could go 3-0, beat Penn State, I think Albany was their other game, and then at Pitt, a couple of rivalry games in there. If they get to 3-0, look out. They're going to have some attention on them.
Tell you right now, if they beat Penn State, first of all, you're going to be very happy because everyone knows how you feel about James Franklin. If they beat Penn State, they will be my winner of the weekend after that weekend. Like, I just guarantee it.
Calling it right now.
Calling it right now. Come on, Neal. Get it done. Let me talk about you, buddy. All right, let's finish up with our winners and losers of the weekend. But first,
all you grill masters, listen up. Didier Ranch delivers premium quality beef that is 100% raised in Oklahoma right to your front door. Go to DidierRanch.com, DIDIER ranch.com to order one of their premium quality beef boxes and use promo code Oklahoma15 for 15% off your order. Filet, ribeye, New York strip, sirloin, steak burgers. They've got it all, and they ship anywhere in the continental U.S., and Oklahomans can get deliveries in just 1 to 2 days. The only thing better than having a lot of premium beef on the O&D line, having premium beef delivered right to your front door. Didier Ranch, tradition tastes better.
And head to the garage for hand smashed patties, butter toasted buns, and some ice cold beer. It's the perfect spot to watch any big game, and with all the garage locations being open to 10 p.m. or later every night, it's the go-to late night spot. Visit eatatthegarage.com to find a location near you and order online from the garage in your neighborhood.
Attention business owners, you need Insurica in your life. Insurica is one of the country's largest insurance brokers with 30 offices throughout Oklahoma, Texas, and the Southwest. Insurica is able to customize programs by accessing the latest information from many insurance carriers. They compare and contrast coverage offerings and pricing in order to design a cost-effective, comprehensive program to meet your business's specific needs. If your business partners with Insurica, you'll save huge amounts of money and take back control of your total cost of risk. If your business wants to be best in class, connect with Insurica at Insurica.com. That's INSURICA.com.
As always, Ted, kick us off. Who do you have as your winner of the weekend?
Woo, I had to go with my man, Jordan Love. The cash is flowing in the NFL. Tough decisions having to be made out there. Now, I have to say, this is one of the most convoluted contracts I've ever seen. It's hard to even say like what the breakdown of it is, but $220 million over 4 years, and in year one, he's going to get a total of $79 million. NFL record, $75 million signing bonus. Whew.
We wondered what the floor was going to be for Jordan Love. I put that floor at 50 a year. Turns out they're just going to make him the highest paid quarterback in the history of the league. There we go. It's just going to keep going up and up. Tua's contract was just under it. I think Dak Prescott is, a lot of people think that he's up next. Dak has certainly accomplished a lot more than Jordan Love. Let me make myself clear. Thrilled for Jordan Love. Congratulations. But the guy just got $220 million with 1 season of production. So we'll see how it works out for the Green Bay Packers. It's either going to be a great contract if he plays at a high level, or it's going to be one where we go, ooh, probably shouldn't have given him that after 17 games.
Yeah. You know, there comes the thing for me is, I would say Jordan Love falls into the category of we're not sure yet what he can be. We don't know how high the mountain is. Dak is a different category. Like, have we already seen what he's capable of? And if you have, like, I'm not sitting here suggesting that Dallas should let him go into free agency, but I'm wondering, like, at what point do you say, like, we're going to marry ourselves to this moving forward and pay him, I don't know, what's he going to get? 60 million a year? Like, 220 over 4 for Jordan Love. I mean, 240 for 4 for Dak Prescott. Like, I guess what I'm saying is, it's a little bit different situation. The Packers are thinking, hey, he's going to grow and blossom into, like, our guy. It's just a different conversation with that, because a lot of Cowboys fans feel like he's what's holding them back whenever they get into the postseason. Is that the truth? I don't know. That's up for debate, but I mean, it's interesting. He's had plenty of opportunity with a lot. Like, I mean, has there been a guy that's played behind a better offensive line for as long as Dak Prescott has?
He's had some really good O-lines. I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
How old's Dak Prescott? It feels like he's been part of our football lives for a very long time, right? As the quarterback for the Cowboys.
He was at Mississippi State. They were the first college football ranking. I guess that would have been 2014. He was his last year in college. So he's been in the NFL. This will be his what? This will be year 10.
He's 30 years old. That's it. Doesn't it seem like he should be older than that?
I think yeah.
Jordan Love's 25. So he's 5 years younger than Dak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right. I think, and I keep bringing up that Jordan Love, he's only got 1 season of production. Back half of last year, that dude looked good.
Yeah.
Like, the talent, you can see. And the Green Bay Packers have a pretty good track record of knowing when they've got their guy at quarterback.
Yeah.
So you kind of just give them the benefit of the doubt there. You see the physical talent. He's not going to get worse. He's only going to get better. Should he be the highest paid player in the NFL? No, he shouldn't. But that just, the market kind of dictates that.
It ain't going to last for long.
Yeah, it's going to last a week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the conversation with Dak is interesting. Like, he's only 30. That's where it feels like he's 35, but he's only 30 years old. I mean, he's got 7, 8, 9, 10 years left in him. So I understand thinking that maybe Dak is a completely finished product, but he also is not that old, and maybe he could get better as well. So that's where I don't know. It's a really interesting conversation comparing those two guys.
It's not a fun conversation. And then you're also, if you're Dallas, CeeDee Lamb is not going to be on your football team unless you make him the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, right? I mean, isn't that what's going to, or right there with what Jefferson brought in?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you have, if that's what's going to happen, you have to get the most out of CD, and that kind of keeps you from like rolling the dice and bringing in somebody to try and bridge the gap or something. Like, if you're going to pay CD, you have to pay Dak.
By the way, Dak turns 31 tomorrow. So he's 31. He's 31.
I mean, he's an interesting guy. Like, if you take a Drew Brees or a Peyton Manning, a Tom Brady, those guys played for a really long time, but they never had to redefine themselves. They were pure passers the whole time. I mean, Drew Brees moved around a little bit, but he wasn't that guy. And Dak isn't necessarily a guy that's like scrambling around like crazy, but I think he's going to have to redefine himself to be a pure passer, to be able to have, a good back half of his career, to be on pace. So that's interesting. It's like, what got him to where he is now? And is he going to be able to use that for the rest of his career? That's interesting to think about.
Remember when he snapped his leg and Romo was like, hopefully it's just a cramp? All-time clip.
He's cramping. No, it's like, it looks like his calf is on the top of his leg, not the bottom of it. I don't think that's a cramp does that. That was great.
Well, Dak's going to get paid. I just don't know. We'll see how much. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. But yeah,
he broke the bank his last contract, didn't he? Did he get like 50 on his last deal?
He's
crazy.
Going to do it again.
Yep.
Who do you have as your loser of the weekend?
I didn't really know how to classify this, but I'm going to go with the house settlement that's been going on and kind of what has come out of that. It's been really interesting. The scholarship and roster limitations that I think are going to, it starts in the next school year, I believe, right? 25-26 school year. And essentially, you've got full rosters across the board now and full scholarships for all of those rosters. So the amount of new scholarships coming on board is massive. And I think, at least it sounds like it right now, those new scholarships are going to be carved out of the revenue sharing. As we know, between 20 and $25 million of revenue is going to be shared with the players moving forward. And I think a big carve out of that is going to be full funding scholarships for a lot of the other rosters outside of football, and football roster numbers are going to go up as well. I think there's going to be winners in this, and I think there's going to be losers in this, and I'm not sure how it's going to shake out rather.
When you look at it just on the surface, it's like, hey, there is like over 750 new scholarship opportunities. But while the school can offer a full scholarship to every athlete up to the roster limit in each sport, they are not required to distribute scholarships to each player.
Right.
So I was very, very excited. I want to make something very clear. I want as many kids to go to college for free and be athletes as possible. It's a tremendous experience that you and I were fortunate enough to have. Not having to worry about tuition, like all that stuff. It's a massive deal. But I'm just very skeptical that schools are going to add a bunch of scholarships in sports that are already losing them money. I think everyone, let's say everyone in the Power Four, the new scholarship limit, or I guess it's not a scholarship limit anymore, it's a roster limit. The new roster limit for football is 105. I think that everyone in the Power Four, or at least at the very least, everyone in the SEC and the Big Ten, are going to get 105 scholarship football players. Then you have to add, from what I understand, you're going to have to add scholarships in women's athletics to remain Title IX compliant. It'll be really interesting to see what women's athletics, like which programs each school adds those scholarships to, because I think it's going to be different. I don't think there's going to be just one model that every school falls in, because I think different sports mean different things in different areas of the country. But I don't know, man. I feel like everything in college athletics is about money now. So I don't all of a sudden think that all of these sports across the board are just going to get these big scholarship bumps. Why would an athletic department do that?
I don't know. It is interesting. Like, if you can carve out of that 20 million to fund a lot of those scholarships, I think they'll do that. But you also don't want to fall behind any, because there's going to be some schools that, like, that's going to go like straight to football for the most part, right? Football pays for everything. But another thing that I feel like is interesting, did they just destroy baseball? One of the things about college baseball is you have a bunch of really good players that go to junior college, that go to smaller schools, because the scholarship limit in baseball was so restrictive. You only have 11.7 scholarships on a baseball team. Now you've got 34. It went up by more than, it's grown huge, like 120 something percent or whatever that number is. So used to, you couldn't get a scholarship to go play at Oklahoma. You go play maybe at Cali County, or you go, you know what I'm saying? I wonder what's going to happen there. And they did it previously. It wasn't a money issue. It was a competition deal, because there's a lot of small schools out there that couldn't afford to have, 30, the new number is 34, couldn't afford to have 34 scholarship guys playing baseball. So that's why the limit was there. Well, now it's open up. Like, are any of the smaller schools going to ever be able to compete again? And maybe baseball players would rather go start and play at a smaller school than be on bench. Like, I don't know how that works out necessarily, but some of these schools that have kind of made their living off of being able to get players because of the scholarship limitations in their sport, is that going to be gone?
I don't know. Because remember, while the schools, they can get up to that number of scholarships, they don't have to.
Right.
So I don't know, like OU baseball, are they going to use all 34? Or is it going to be one of these situations where, they had 11.7. Now Joe Castiglione tells Skip Johnson, hey, you've got 20. One interesting question is, how do endowments work and all of this stuff with the scholarships? You've got these colleges that have these massive endowments. Can you take some of the money from there for the scholarship? That's where I'm not smart enough to know all the mechanics of that type of stuff. We don't need to go down this rabbit hole right now, but I think the revenue sharing thing is going to be a litigation disaster for the NCAA.
Well,
no one knows how they're going to distribute this revenue sharing. And remember, you only have to adhere to this new roster limit thing if you opt into revenue share with your athletes. If you don't opt in, you kind of, I don't know, just get to do whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, if you don't opt in, you opt out of big time sports, basically, right?
Yeah.
You're not going
And
to.
I think you're going to see some schools go, you know what? Maybe we should be out.
Yeah, it's interesting because the effect that has on like having a good football team is the best marketing you can have to drive or the like if you have a great baseball or basketball, let's be honest, like Duke would not be Duke if they weren't known for being an unbelievable basketball school. They just wouldn't. It would not be the same school. So like it's the best marketing you can have to drive your enrollment. And enrollment is like the sports are the big money or big money, but the enrollment is why they pour all of the money and effort. It's not just to go have fun and watch sports. It's because for us going to the SEC and winning an SEC championship, what the effect that would have on enrollment at Oklahoma would be incredible. That's where the real money is. And that's why they do this whole thing.
I think, the old saying, athletics is the front porch of the university. And that's where you look at these new roster limits, and I think it's going to start some very interesting conversations in administrations around the country when it comes to what programs make us money. And I'm not saying what athletic programs operate in the black. That's not what I'm saying. Although there are some football programs, probably some men's basketball programs, but what sports bring more students that will pay tuition to our school? And I think OU softball is the perfect example. I do not know all of the details about OU softball's revenue. I would assume they're either making a little money or losing a little money. But I know this. They make the school money. The success that program has had and the attention that the University of Oklahoma has got, the exposure, each and every June when you turn ESPN on and you go, well, there's Patty Gasso. There's OU softball again. All they do is win 4 in a row. That brings more students that end up paying tuition. OU softball, when you look at their balance sheet, and once again, I don't know, but I would say the profit is either minimal or the loss is minimal. But the overall value to the University of Oklahoma is substantial because of the exposure it's created for OU and because of the branding, because of the reputation. Like people, when they think Oklahoma, now, of course, they think Oklahoma football, but they go, have you seen their damn softball team? They are a wagon. Mm-hmm. And that carries weight around the country. And I just think that's where these conversations are going to be, they're going to be really interesting. Like a Patty Gasso, because softball's going from 12 scholarships to 25.
Yeah.
If Patty Gasso comes to Joe Castiglione and goes, I want all 25. Like, what does he say? That's where some of these are going to
be.
Yeah.
I mean,
probably. Yes, ma'am. But I don't know. I think there's just going to be a lot of interesting conversations and administrations around the country with this thing. Ted and I have no clue how it's going to play out.
Yeah. I think it's probably like, I would say that the better your program does, the more scholarships you're going to get, like right out of the gate. I mean, I think it's going to be a constant negotiation. If you are representing and doing well, I imagine they're going to want to fund more scholarships. But like if you take a place like Stanford or I mean, some of these schools that are huge into like the Olympic sports and stuff that are a burden that like financially you're not making any money off of those programs. I I don't know that there's going to be a big battle for those scholarships anyway, if that makes, you know what I'm saying? Like if you don't get a whole lot of exposure and it's not creating a big, incentive for students to come, or, it's a big marketing arm for your university. Like, I don't know that there's going to be a big push to like, I think equestrian, the, the scholarship number on equestrian is 50. I think it was 3 previously, and now full roster for equestrian is 50. I don't know that anyone's going to be funding 50 equestrian scholarships.
Hold on. Be right back. I'm going to go teach my kid to ride a horse so he can go to college for free.
Maybe there's going to be a big boom in equestrian across the country.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating. And then, I mean, we'll talk about it when it happens, but the way that I understand it, they make the revenue sharing sound like, hey, we are going to pay the athletes money, right, from this revenue share. If I was a college football player, I would go, does anyone deserve money but us? We're the only ones that make revenue.
Well, that's been my question
and that's where
how can you revenue share if your sport doesn't revenue?
And then how does Title IX factor in that? Like, do you have to pay the same number of male athletes as you do female athletes, or is it the same amount? Because if I'm a college football player and let's say Alabama, I would say pretty big college football brand, right? A lot of value to the school. A women's basketball player is not generating the revenue I'm generating if I'm an Alabama football player.
No.
So it doesn't make sense if I'm getting the same thing that she's getting. That's typically not how economics, that's not how capitalism works. But is that how it's going to be? Because if that is how it is, like the lawsuits are just going to roll in, right? Like any college football player that is going to sit there and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. These massive TV deals are because of us. What? And it won't just be, they'll be complaining about every other sport, not just women's athletics. It's like, hey, these baseball guys don't deserve that. We deserve that. We make the money. Like, I think it's going to be a disaster, man. Or maybe I'm missing something.
Well, not my world, but this has been all of this stuff with college football. It's like, I mean, someone needs to write a book on unintended consequences out of this, like this last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years of college football. But one of the things that I find interesting is like the whole Title IX thing. What Title IX, how it's being used has nothing to do with the original Title IX. And if you read it in like its basic form, there's nothing in Title IX that would ever suggest that the revenue brought in, like it's so weird, like the interpretation, which goes down a whole nother, like, does the Chevron situation that was passed, like the Supreme Court decision, does that have an effect on how Title IX is implemented? I don't know. Like, there's like so much legal stuff that's, I don't know. I feel like we've gone so far away from the original intention of that. Like, I don't know how that could ever hold up to a revenue sharing situation when you don't produce revenue. Like, to me, it's like the most basic thing ever. So I don't know how that ever gets interpreted.
We'll see. You know who? I'm going to get our buddy, Bud Elliott, to come on. He's a lawyer. Also college football knowledge. Maybe we can yell at him a little bit. We always have fun with Bud, but maybe he can help explain some of this stuff to us. Like, we didn't go to law school. Like, we're just trying to understand all this. Maybe he can help us a little bit Ted, with what this thing may end up looking like and how it may end up functioning.
I know what's
My
wild.
brain hurts just trying to figure out what's going to happen. It's like,
There's a butterfly effect on all of these things. Like every lawsuit, everything that happens, every ruling, like the list of like the damage or whatever you want to call it, down collateral damage down the line is wild. And I don't know if I would love to have Bud Elliott on, but at the same time, I don't know if there's anyone out there that has a grasp on, like, there is no one person that understands the deal. It's just a big, giant mess, I feel like.
that's how it feels. All right, let's get to my winner and loser. But first, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. We all have a lot going on in our lives when your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects. You got a lot more stuff going on. It's easy to let your priorities slip. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. That's where BetterHelp comes in. Visit betterhelp.com/OKC to get 10% off your first month on BetterHelp. I started talking with a therapist when I was playing the NFL, was really stressed out, bottom of the roster life, not fun. Therapy really helped me get through that entire process in my career. I'm a big believer in therapy and believe it can help so many people if they just try it. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and go from there. You can even switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Therapy can help you focus on what really matters in your life. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/OKC to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/OKC to get 10% off your first month.
Three things matter in banking: service, service, and service. First Fidelity Bank's commitment to exceptional service is more than a promise, it's their foundation. FFB has been by your side for over a century, and they're honored to be a part of your journey. Banking isn't about where you've been, it's about where you're headed. Open an account at an award-winning bank today at ffb.com. At First Fidelity Bank, we go where you go.
And head to opolisclothing.com for our podcast merchandise and the best O-year gear out there. That's OPOLIS clothing.com and use promo code TED, TED, for 10% off. That's opolisclothing.com. Use promo code TED for 10% off. Buttery soft and 10% off. My winner of the weekend, Charles Barkley. Let me explain. We've talked a lot about the new NBA rights deal and where TNT stood and was inside the NBA going to survive. TNT came out and said, hey, we have matched Amazon's bid. And with our current contract, that means we are going to be part of the NBA TV rights deal moving forward. And everyone went, yes, inside the NBA is going to stay. We're all good. And then the NBA came out and said, you did not match Amazon's deal and you're out. And now Warner Brothers Discovery, who owns TNT, is suing the NBA, said, we matched it. And the NBA saying, nuh-uh. And so now we're going to have TNT games this season because the new deal doesn't kick in until next season. But in a very weird way, Ted, this feels like a very good thing for Charles Barkley if he wants to keep working, because he's about to become an unrestricted free agent. And I could only imagine what NBC and ESPN and Amazon are going to throw at him, Ted. He said he's talked to all three. No one is more popular in sports commentary than Charles Barkley. And I could only imagine what these companies are going to throw at him and the power that he wields in these negotiations. That's got to be an awesome feeling if you're Charles Barkley.
I know. I think one of the great things about that show is I think that, with Shaq and with Barkley and Kenny, it's like all of them could be like totally fine if they didn't do it. And that's like part of it is like it's fun. Let's get together and talk about the game. It has that feeling to it. You go to some other shows and you feel like there's a lot of ambition there about trying to do good and trying to put out a great product. Like they just kind of show up and talk about the game, and it works perfectly. So, um, it's going to be interesting to see like how, like, if he wants to keep doing it, and like if he does, like how involved is he going to be? Like, is he going to limit himself a little bit more and start to peel back a little bit? But you're right. With some of the numbers that they are throwing out for TV, like Tom Brady's deal and how much Romo gets paid, I know that's a different sport, but just goes to show that in those boardrooms, at least they've shown that they feel like the people talking about the sport are driving it in a big, big manner, and having someone on your broadcast like that is well worth it.
He was making 21 million a year from TNT. And remember, that's the NBA stuff. And I assume the March Madness stuff is built into that as well.
Yeah.
So he was already making a boatload, but he's just I mean, there's no one else that's even in the conversation. He's the most valuable personality in basketball. Not even close. So,
which is funny considering everything. It's like, I mean, I don't know like where his expertise exactly lies. I mean, it's interesting. I think he's just enjoyable for every demographic to listen to.
you have to imagine that Amazon is going to throw a massive offer his way. And I don't know if all three, right? Because the new NBA deal, it's NBC, ESPN, and Amazon. Clearly, the NBA wants Amazon, that global reach with the streaming stuff. Like, it makes all the sense in the world. Their international broadcast rights are about to be up as well. There's a lot of reasons why they chose Amazon over TNT, okay? But if you're Amazon, what would bring more eyeballs for you than the most popular basketball show on television? You try to convince Ernie Johnson, hey, you could work for someone else other than Turner. Or you just say, hey, everything stays the same. All your people, just send it to us and then we just put it on our platform. Everything stays the same. You just work it out if you're Amazon, right? You just keep that show together because that's how people are going to get driven to Prime Video. I think it makes all the sense in the world.
Amazon has so much money. They could probably just say, just buy Warner Brothers. Forget the lawsuit. Just buy them. We'll simulcast it we'll stream it, and we'll put it on our new Amazon television channel. I was like, I don't know. They've got such a stupid amount of cash laying around. It's like they've got to get into this stuff, like to try and generate, like find somewhere to place some of their big cash, the piles of cash that they've got. So yeah, I don't know how it's going to end up. I hope that it's not only on streaming. That's my hope.
You're not a big fan of the streaming life.
No, it just doesn't work as well for me.
I'm not going to call you old. I'm not going to call you old. Let's just move on. Let's move on to my loser. I'm not going to call you old. I'm not going to do it. But I know this. Charles Barkley, if he wants to continue to work, he going to make a lot of money.
Yep, that's right.
Whole lot. Has all the power. My loser of the weekend, Olympic pain, is what I thought was going with. My loser of the weekend is going to be Lincoln Riley. We'll get into everything he said at Big Ten Media Days, but Olympic pain, and this is what I mean, Ted. The Olympics, it's got these awesome moments, right? I've been watching a ton of it, and like watching the U.S. men's soccer team bounce back and play well against New Zealand and score 4 goals, and just watching the joy on those guys' face. And then watching the men's 4x100 swimming relay, watching them win gold, watching Dressel just close that thing out. Like, those are these these moments that I love watching the Olympics. But dude, there are some painful ones, and it hurts to watch. And I was watching men's gymnastics. Brody Malone, oh my gosh. This is a guy that he had this gnarly leg break in competition, battles all the way back, wins the U.S. championship last month. They're coming in with high expectations, possibly medaling as a team. He's a guy that a lot of people think are going to be in the all-around final and have a chance. He's one of the, from what I understand, one of the favorites in the high bar. Like he's one of the best in the world at the high bar. He's got big aspirations to win a medal in that event. And I'm watching it. Get to the high bar rotation. Dude falls twice. They're showing his family. You can just see the look on his face. It is just as high as the high moments are, like watching Americans in the Olympics, like watching these people prepare for 4 years for these, minutes, seconds, and watching that guy just, I'm not going to say he choked, but he just underperformed, hurt his team, hurt his individual aspirations for a medal. Like it was, I kind of forget how brutal that is to watch sometimes. And man, dude, it is just, it's heartbreaking to watch when that happens to people.
It is. And there's no avenue really for redemption.
No.
There's some rare exceptions like Simone Biles, like Phelps, who there's some people that are in a bunch of Olympics, but usually you get one shot, maybe two shots at the Olympics, and you can't spread that mistake over a season or, oh, we'll get them next year. That's it. That's why it's the ultimate. The stakes are so high. And you're right. They kept showing the family. Was that his
I think it was his fiance. Just like slow tear down the face. I was, my wife and I were sitting there watching it going, oh my gosh, this is so brutal to watch.
It's got to be.
I'm guessing that was his dad next to her.
Yeah.
Oh, the pain on his face when he fell.
Think about the families.
Oh,
like the amount of tension for a family, like, is there's nothing you do as a performer, an athlete, when you're in your element, you're in your element. Like you're thinking about it, but hopefully he wasn't up there thinking about, oh, look, this is the only shot that I'll ever have, like before he goes. But as someone who's just watching, that is exactly what you're thinking. It's like, oh my God, are we really here? And it's all comes down to this like 30-second routine. And if you don't absolutely nail it, the whole thing's over. It's just, you're right, brutal to watch.
Loser of the weekend, Lincoln Riley at Big Ten Media Days. Made headlines for multiple reasons. But Ted, really what I want to dive into is not what he said, them playing catch up in all these areas. Like it is what it is. But some of the things that he said about scheduling, I think leads to an interesting conversation. And he was asked about the rivalry game that they play against Notre Dame. And he did. He said he hopes it stays. But he essentially said that them being in the Big Ten now and what their conference schedule is going to look like moving forward and what it's going to look like every year, how challenging it's going to be, that they're going to have to continue to evaluate whether or not that Notre Dame game being on the schedule helps them chase a national title. And he was just being ominous, and he's got a great point. But, dude, I hate that statement so much. I hate it so much. I want to see Notre Dame and USC play every season. We all love traditional rivalry games. We've lost so many of them because of conference realignment. And I also kind of hate that he's probably right. If the ultimate goal for USC is to win a national title, then does playing Notre Dame help them now that they're in the Big Ten? I don't know. But it certainly doesn't help this reputation he's developed or is developing that and he kind of likes to run from competition a little bit. So I don't know. There was so much chatter about that statement that he had at Big Ten Media Day, and it got me thinking about what's the future of this thing going to look like when it comes to non-conference games, and him saying that they're going to have to evaluate whether or not it's the best thing for the program. It just made me kind of sad, man. It made me remember that Bedlam's gone, and that sucks. Like
Yeah. It's interesting. Someone needs to grab Lincoln Riley and just shake him and scream, "What are you doing? Shut up." He needs like a publicist or something. The guy, I don't understand what he's doing. It looks horrible. Like, you just don't have to say it. I understand what he's saying, but just don't say it. Like right now, everything that comes out of his mouth is going to be used against him on the recruiting trail. You don't want to go to USC. They're trying to dodge everyone. You're not going to play any big games. I don't know. It's ridiculous. But your point about the Notre Dame game, it is interesting. And the thing I thought about is, if what Lincoln Riley says is true, and I'm inclined to somewhat agree with it, we'll have to see how things shake out. I mean, let's say the Big Ten is trying to get 3 teams in, and like you're competing to maybe be that 3rd team. A win over Notre Dame in the non-conference is definitely going to help you get in over someone else, all things equal. But if that's not going to be weighted as heavy, that may be the case. And what I was thinking is, well, if USC doesn't want to play Notre Dame, is anyone else? And at what point, and I know they've got some ACC tie-ins, but at what point, with some of their big games that they play every year, if teams become unwilling to play that, are they going to be forced to join a conference?
They love their
People
independence.
just stop scheduling them?
Let's just be real. It would be hilarious that Lincoln Riley talking about this publicly is actually what gets the ball rolling on Notre Dame having to join the Big Ten, and then the Big Ten makes them play it.
Yeah.
Be kind of funny. I mean,
but you know what I'm saying?
No, I hear you. No, it's a good point. I just think that in the USC Notre Dame thing, I do think there are some differences between that game and some of these rivalries we've lost, over the last decade. Like, we lost Texas playing Texas A&M because they were in different conferences. It was a conference game, and then they were in different conferences. They did not schedule in the non-conference. Same thing's about to happen with Bedlam, right? USC and Notre Dame have played a non-conference game for forever. So USC being in a different conference, it does not change anything about that game. It's always been a non-conference game. It's going to continue to be a non-conference game. So there are some differences there where you look at it and go, yeah, we've lost some of these games, but hey, you guys can still play this game. You just don't want to play it.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because it's basically like, well, what are you saying? Well, you're saying that you used to be in a much easier conference. All right. Isn't that what you're saying? Like, the conference we were in was so much easier previously. I don't know how long it's been since they won that, but that doesn't matter. You're saying like we're in a more difficult conference now, so we don't want to play as many difficult non-conference games. It's just like, I don't know. It's a weird thing to say. I don't know that you should be saying it out there.
It's a weird thing to say publicly.
On the heels of the LSU and Ole Miss deal.
I think there are a lot of coaches, especially in the Big Ten and the SEC, that are saying similar things to what Lincoln Riley said, but they're saying it behind closed doors to their athletic directors.
Yeah.
They're not saying it publicly. And that's the difference here, because I do think that there are coaches out there going, hey, can you guys just give me some layups? I mean, you heard Deion Sanders talk about it at Big 12 Media Day. What, they've got North Dakota State out of the gate? He's like, why the hell are we playing this game? Which I think there's quite a few coaches that feel that way. And that's what Lincoln Riley was saying. But I don't know, just all of the things that have happened over the last several months, he's just not helping his case.
No.
And he brings up Alabama's non-conference scheduling through their run of dominance with Saban. He was like, they scheduled the occasional big non-com game, but he was like, they didn't schedule for the fans. They scheduled to win championships. You're kind of omitting the part where they had unbelievable players and the best coach of all time leading them. It wasn't just that they didn't play the most robust non-conference schedule. How about having the greatest coach ever, a tremendous evaluation and development system, an insane amount of talent on both sides of the football, complete buy-in from the administration and the school. Like, it's not just the schedule, Lincoln. Like, what are you talking about?
And, the way you look at a schedule is totally different. For example, we were talking with Neal Brown about how difficult West Virginia's schedule is. Well, it is difficult. But if Georgia was playing West Virginia's schedule, we probably wouldn't talk about how brutal it is, right? So when you're the number one team in the country for 15 years, your schedule is viewed that way as the number one team.
Your schedule's easy because you have better players than everyone else. You've got 5-star freaks at every position.
You never play anyone better than you because there's not anyone better than you. So, and I wonder what USC fans think of the Notre Dame game. Like, is that a big tradition for them? Is it something that they really hang their hat on? Same thing with Notre Dame fans, because I could see Lincoln Riley. How long has USC played Notre Dame? Do you have any idea?
A very long time. I've got no idea though.
I could see Lincoln Riley coming in. This is going to be his third year there, pounding the table about not playing Notre Dame. They get rid of the Notre Dame game. He convinces everyone it's a bad idea, has one good year, and then goes and takes the Chargers job. And it's
the rivalry began in 1926. The rivalry game has been played every year from 1926 to the present, with exception of a break during World War II and then 2020 because of COVID.
It's 100-year rivalry. And like I said, I could see him fighting to get it dropped. They drop it, and then he takes the next better job that he can get. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy.
USC fans just can't love how this feels, right?
He sucks. I'm telling you, he is the worst public image in what he's saying. The stupid smoked brisket thing, just own it. Just own it. And say, it was dry as hell. I'm thinking about coming out with the jerky that we're going to sell, Just own it and move on. Why fight that stupid ass battle for 10 years to where it keeps getting brought up? You know what I'm saying? It's like he must be the ego is so big, he can't see it from any other angle. It's fascinating.
Last thing on this, hearing, one of the coaches at a blue blood program, USC is a blue blood program, talk about this. It gets you thinking about what the future of non-conference games is going to be like. And this is what I believe to my core. The 12-team playoff, I think, is a good thing. More access. You heard Neal Brown talk about it. More access creates more energy, more programs across the country. We have to find a way to incentivize teams to continue to play big marquee non-conference games, because all the TV networks want to put them on. All the fans want to watch them. And I know money always talks in these situations, but and maybe that's how you do it. Maybe you carve out, bonuses in the TV deal if you play these big games for teams. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but I know I don't want big time non-conference games to go away because these teams are so worried about how brutal their conference schedule is year in and year out. I don't think anyone wants to see all those games go away. Yeah, we want to see our teams win. There's no doubt, but those big time non-conference games are fun. They're special. Let's figure out a way to make sure they keep happening. And if you incentivize schools, programs to continue to play them, I don't know what those incentives look like, but if you do it, they'll play them. Just got to figure it out.
Yeah.
I think.
I've long advocated for like crossover games. Like I think the Big Ten champion should play the SEC champion the first game of the season the next year, and decide where you want to play it and kind of like run it down from there. The Big 12 champion plays the ACC champion first game of the year in a non-conference game. Figure out where you want to play it every year, and then kind of run it down. Second place plays second place, to where you get a big crossover that is equal. It may not be perfectly equal, right? Because you graduated guys, and maybe the Big 12 champion won the national championship, and the ACC champion had 2 losses or 3 losses and barely made the playoff. Like, it's not necessarily equal, but like whenever you know that stuff is built in, and you're going to get good non-conference crossover games, because people want to see them. And I think like if you do it to where there's like a method to the madness, instead of some people schedule tough ones, some people don't. I think if you just like agree to do it like 1 or 2 weekends, I think it can be honestly beneficial for everybody.
Interesting. Birthday shout outs. Happy 13th birthday to Nora B.
Happy 28th birthday to Eric Lewis.
And you're going to love this one, Ted. Shout out to Bradford Kilo and the rest of the Oklahoma Little League team from Tulsa, trying to go be the first Oklahoma team since 1998 to make the Little League World Series in Williamsport. Let's go, boys. Good luck.
Let's go, fellas. Go win the dang thing.
That's win awesome. It all, boys. Come on. On that note, episode 443 in the books. We'll have a new podcast that'll drop on Wednesday. Our biggest questions for OU football as training camp begins. Always a fun conversation. Just a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hope you all have a great start to your week. And until next time, we appreciate y'all for listening. Do what you always do, Oklahoma. Take care of each other.